many of you know, the farm, the rural farm in Edgewood, British Columbia, received their interim stay order. Now, I'm going to give you the ins and outs of what that actually means. This is a very important video because I know people are running around saying, oh my gosh, we won! We saved the birds! It's saved the birds for now, potentially a few days. But before I do that, I want to point out something here. This is where Rebel News had eyes in the sky. We showed you from a helicopter the operation that was going on here with the hay bales, and now you can see there are blue fences surrounding that. I believe those are the Super Save fences, and they've got a lot of ostriches going there. You can also see, I don't know if you can, the charred areas of the hay line. This arrangement of hay here, it's almost like a V, and that's called a kill box, where I believe they're going to herd the animals into before they shoot them. But you can see the charred happening because there was a fire on the hay bales. It's just, there's always something going on here. But there was a fire. We did live streams about that. We gave an update about what we know about that. The police are investigating that. The farmers are saying we had nothing to do with that. We don't believe our supporters would because they love the animals too much. You know, maybe it's some of the people we hate them, but who knows? Who knows who it is? But back to the win today. These farmers are always calling every day a miracle. And I gotta tell you, I have covered a lot of miracles. I don't cover a lot of miracles in any Rebel News report, and I've covered too many miracles to count. Some are little, some are big. This is a big one. And it's a big one because look, the CFIA was probably going to kill their flock today. And today is the same day that they receive their interim order from the Supreme Court. Now, what does that mean? I have linked the actual interim order, the full statement there, which you can look at on my X after this live. But in short, it's an interim stay order that is in place before they apply for a longer order preventing the call. So that means for like a few days, potentially maybe a little bit longer, these birds are in fact safe. It does not mean that the CFIA is going to get off of this property. They still have jurisdiction over half of the operating farm. The farm is owned by two different families. And so the property where the animals are remains under the jurisdiction of the CFIA. They gave a warrant under the Health for Animals Act. So that they're still going to have to face off with the CFIA standing there with their animals, all of a sudden wearing hazmat suits when day one they came here walking through, breaking off the yellow things. None of them had PPE on. None of them had hazmat suits on. And of course they get called out online and they're like, oh yeah, maybe we should act like these birds are actually sick, especially since we're now claiming they have not just the avian flu, they have a mutant version of the avian flu. So now they're walking around with their hazmat suits, which, by the way, we've been live streaming, around the clock, I believe. So you can actually see them in the pen at YouTube, our YouTube Rebel News, and also at our site, savetheostriches.com. So you will not be seeing at this moment these guys actually leaving the property, and you will not be seeing the owners go back in to the pens. I don't think so anyways, and being able to feed their animals. Although you would think they should be able to, but with the fire that happened, that's probably not going to happen. So basically, oh, someone's got something to say?
The truck with, they got they're all suited up in the back of the pickup.
Yeah. Are they feeding them maybe, or?
Don't know.
Yes, he's just pointing out that you can see they're elevated there. And they're on
there's a white pickup,
a pickup truck, and they're in their hazmats pretending that they think they're at risk. We got an RCMP going over, but we know nothing's going to happen. We know nothing's going to happen right now. That's official. I can tell you that. Nothing's happening today. Nothing's happening tomorrow. Nothing is happening probably on day 3. Now, why am I saying a few days? When you guys read the paper, some of you might be confused because you'll see towards the bottom of the decision, it says that the respondents have till, I think it was October 2nd or October 3rd, before they have to respond. So that's the CFIA. So that sounds like it could be October 2nd. But really all that means is how the pace is determined by the CFIA. And that means they could do it very fast. Why do I think they'll do it fast? Well, the fact that they're even here. They knew that these farmers were doing exactly what they were doing. They knew they were applying to Supreme Court, and they still used all of these tax dollars and these resources to bring this operation here, taking the risk that while they were doing this, they could have the mission called off. That's how eager they are to kill 400 healthy ostriches and the science that the ostriches represent. Because remember, these ostriches in the last handful of years were not being used for human consumption. Instead, their eggs were being used to extract antibodies for therapeutic research to fight viruses. The same viruses they shut down our economy for, told you not to hug your grandma for, and told you not to worship for or travel out of the country. That's what these birds are being used to find a better way, a better solution, one that works as God designed, focus on the immune system so that it could be actually working instead of the vaccine, which we all know that didn't work. Anyways, now that they have the avian flu, they're even more valuable for that research, which is why the United States, the Trump administration, has done everything it could to try and save these birds, to try to convince the Carney government to, have some brains and actually be Canada first, like you say you are. But anyway, so the fact that with all of that, they're even here, knowing that this situation could have happened, and even with the delays, after we published some of the names that were going to be involved in the call, after some activists found some other names, I believe there were 4 companies that pulled out. They said, we don't want our trucks going there. We don't want this happening. So even with those delays, they still were racing the farm's lawyer. The state was racing this farm to kill their birds as fast as possible. Even as political pressure begins mounting, there's been some, politicians speaking out, like the local MP, Scott Anderson, has been doing, what he could to apply pressure on the agriculture minister. We've had MLAs speaking out, like MLA Tara Armstrong, who's in this area too, and Jordan Keeley. And, there's been a couple from the BC Conservatives as well. But now we're seeing way more are starting to speak out. So why would this agency be here? And why wouldn't they just respect the court's ability to decide whether or not this farm has the constitutional right to be heard? Okay. And I believe one of the arguments they're going to do, and I'll confirm this with the lawyer, but based on what I'm hearing from the farm, one of the reasons why they think this should go to the Supreme Court is because of the international attention and offers that are being put on this. They're saying this is now an elevated situation and it really needs to be considered because a lot is going to die, and they really want their science heard, because if you remember, that really hasn't happened this whole time. So back in the spring, they started with a judicial review. They wanted to review whether or not it's possible, and of course it shouldn't be, but why on earth is it legal, lawful, and okay and scientific to just barge onto a farm, say you had an anonymous tip, which by the way, they don't even need an anonymous tip. They can come in if they want to, and say, hey, we think your birds have avian flu. Test only the deceased carcasses, none of these living, thriving, happy ones, and then say, okay, they all have to die. And then the farmers go, okay, but wait a second, like there's so many who are asymptomatic and all of the older ones don't seem to be getting sick, just a couple, but they're not really sick. And look, oh my gosh, a few days later, they're recovered. And you know what? Maybe it's because they already had an illness, which they did a couple of years earlier. It's only the young ones getting sick. Like these were the very logical, reasonable questions that in the very beginning, when we first started covering, these farmers were asking. They were saying, can't you guys just, test the healthy ones? Can't you guys just test the ones that are like running around and dancing and mating and all that? But no, the CFIA has consistently refused to retest and said, and if you retest, you will receive 6 months in jail. You could, and I think it was up to $100,000 or $200,000 fine. So the fact that they are racing the clock with all of the mounting pressure, international pressure, now global attention in the media, just tells me they're going to race with this legal stuff too. They're going to leave this here, have all your tax dollars spent here, stare at these birds. And I hope the CFIA officials are staring at the birds, because there is something magical when you do. That's why people are still coming to this farm, 301 Langell Road. So that's what is going down. It's the pace is determined by the CFIA. And then after that, the farm's lawyer, Omar Sheikh, who is based out of Victoria with Sheikh Law, he has 2 days to respond. So they're trying to apply for a leave, and a leave is a longer pause to the call than what they have now, so that they could pursue having their case heard in the Supreme Court, as I said. So think of it in non-legal ways as a stay. Means they're going to stay here, they're going to stare here, and they're hoping, they're praying that the courts say they can come kill these healthy birds and destroy the livelihood of the farmers that are bawling every day about it. Or a leave means most likely they're going to have to leave, because it's going to take a while. Then these good birds are going to live longer. And this farm, I remember interviewing Katie, one of the first interviews, she said they messed with the wrong farm. We're never going to let this go. We're never going to let our pets be killed. We know these pets. We were raised with these pets. Some of them have been here 30 years. Yeah, we're not going to let this go. And I bet you, even if they do kill these birds, they're still not going to let it go. I don't think their supporters are going to let it go. Some of these people have been here so long. And, you've got grown men who have been here just tearing up today, just driving by saying, thank you guys. Thank you for getting the news out and all of these things. Because everyone is working together like an oiled machine to save these birds, because they really believe that they are saving Canada, saving sovereignty. And put it this way, look at all of the core issues that have been plaguing Canada that are wrapped up in this story. So you have the very basic farming rights. I don't mean basic, I just mean obviously this is about farming rights. And then you have property rights intertwined in this. You have food rights, because if the CFIA can just march in and kill healthy animals, even though they're so valuable and we're so much more, then there's no animals that's safe. Your pet's not safe. The cattle's not safe. I mean, they're just going to keep this stamping out policy that's WHO inspired, and they're just going to keep doing it. And by the way, when they point the finger at the WHO, which is what they do in the courts, the CFIA says, oh, well, this is the World Health, it's recognized by the World Health Organization. We're not doing anything wrong. Yes, that is what their policy is based on. But they are superseding what the World Organization of Animal Health, so WOAH, they're actually superseding the guidelines from the WHO. And when I say that, they're superseding it because the WHO, when you're all of this land, the zone that they're in, you don't call them when they're away from everything else at this distance, and you certainly don't call them, I think the incubation stage is 27 days or something like this. These birds have been healthy and asymptomatic for 253 days, and they just won't retest them. Till next time, SaveTheOstriches.com is where we have a plethora of all of this information. Maybe I can still drive and talk. I think I can. We have all of the information. I've been covering this since December, and Karen, the owner, she said the world is watching with her slogan, and now the world is officially watching.